I was recently told a story about a little 7-year-old girl. She lived in St. Louis, and she, along with her mother and her father and her brother, were moving to New Orleans for her father to take a new job. Because the family didn't have much money, they decided to move in with her uncle. This little girl loved New Orleans. She loved the sound of the Creole and Cajun accents. She loved the new food she'd never had before, and she loved her school. Until one day, when her uncle took her hand and took her to the basement. He began rubbing up against her, and he touched her in places that she didn't like, and she froze. Nothing happened. After that, he took her hand and he took her back upstairs. And for a couple of months, life went on, and then he took her back downstairs to the basement. And again, and again. This little girl never told anyone because she was too scared of what would happen if she did tell her secret. So she kept her secret for 80 years, and then she finally told. And that little girl was my mother. She was what happens with most children who have been abused and sexually abused is that they do keep a secret. And that's when I decided, with over 2 decades of my victim advocacy work, it became personal to me. And so I decided I would do anything within my power to prevent other little boys and girls like my mother from having to keep a secret their whole lives. I also wanted to amplify the voices of victims and survivors so they no longer had to be silenced. And on a broader lens, I wanted to mobilize community-wide efforts in child abuse prevention. So where do we start? Well, we start by understanding the realities of child abuse and upending outdated myths that are actually hurting our children. The first myth is that child abuse doesn't happen here. That's false. In fact, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys will be sexually abused by the age of 18 years old in the United States. In Europe, it's 1 in 5 children. The Centers for Disease Control has designated child abuse as a public health epidemic, costing society over $400 billion a year in direct and indirect costs. This is harming our children, not only physically, but emotionally. And the shocking thing is that over 90% of children are keeping a secret. It is truly a silent epidemic. So myth number 2, it can't happen to my child. Again, false. Many of us were raised with the notion of stranger danger. We were taught not to get into a white van with a stranger we had never seen before who would whisk us away. The reality is that over 90% of the time, the child knows their abuser is someone that they know and often trust. And in fact, the parents may know and trust the abuser as well. And most of the time, it is a family member. Not knowing this is what's dangerous and harmful to our children. Myth number 3, there's nothing I can do about it. Again, that's false. Research has shown that over 70% of child abuse is preventable. There are things that we can do as parents, as caregivers, and aunts and uncles to help protect our children. And this starts with understanding the dynamics about abuse. Abusers, as I said, oftentimes are known by the family. It could be a father, it could be a mother, it could be a brother, it could be a child's coach, it could be their music teacher, it could be their pastor in their church. It is important that we understand this, not to scare children, but so we can put protective factors in. It's also important to develop a relationship with your children so that they're comfortable talking to you. If someone feels scary, if they feel uncomfortable around someone, pay attention. Pay attention to red flags and early warning signs. Some of these can be visible with child abuse, like broken bones, bruises, and so forth. But sometimes those early warning signs are hidden. It's the child who is sociable and expressive becoming withdrawn, or a child becoming violent when normally they are calm, or a child who is sexually knowledgeable or sexually active at a very young age. So pay attention and listen to your children. Talk to them about their bodies. Talk to them without any kind of embarrassment. Tell them about their body parts. Tell them about their private parts. Have them know the real names, the anatomically correct names for their body parts, and that no one should be touching them with their bathing suit covers. And if someone does, they should tell a grown-up. We also can create environments that are safe for children, because abusers look for advantages when they have access to a one-on-one environment with a child. So be diligent about asking questions. Who's going to be there? What kind of supervision? What other adults are going to be at the event? What about a sleepover? Are there other children? If your child is singled out for an extracurricular or another activity, are other children going to be there? And can you attend as well? Can you drop in unannounced? And then talk to your children about secrets, because we know abusers control children by asking them to keep secrets. There are good secrets and there are bad secrets. A good secret might be a surprise, might be keeping that surprise about an upcoming gift for a birthday or a holiday. Bad secrets are when children are being hurt and they're being told not to tell anyone. And if that should happen, they know it's okay to tell a grown-up. In fact, it's important to tell a grown-up. So there are a variety of things we can do as individuals, as parents and caregivers and family members to protect our children. But if we broaden the lens, there are things our community can do to create system-wide change. And I want to share with you what 3 different communities have done to do this and develop groundbreaking initiatives around child abuse prevention. The first community is right here in Fort Bend County, Texas. Fort Bend County, Texas came together and decided that this was a priority. And so they used a human-centered design approach in which they included stakeholders with lived experience about abuse. These were survivors of child abuse as well as parents and others who had experienced. And they talked to these folks and said, what can we do? They developed a program which is anchored in 4 pillars. The first pillar is research. They interviewed 72 survivors of child abuse and parents and others involved in these children's lives and said, what would have happened? What could we have done to prevent abuse? They heard emotional stories about feeling that they couldn't tell anyone, that this had gone on for months, sometimes years. In fact, into adulthood, they couldn't tell anyone. And they said the reason was they were silenced by their abuser. They were scared that if they told, they would be punished, or someone else in their family might be punished. Or they were told, this is a family situation, we keep it quiet because it brings shame to the family. They heard from parents heartbreaking stories about their feelings of shame and blame. What could they have done differently to protect their children and prevent them from being hurt? They said things like, I trusted our pastor. He was always so kind and caring. I couldn't believe my spouse or partner would hurt my child. Or my beautiful daughter, my cheerleader, my straight-A student, was being solicited online. We took this information, the community took this information and said, we must do something. And so they developed the Child Abuse Prevention and it's called CAPC. And the research element was critical to design the program. The next pillar was collaborate, because as a system-wide initiative across the county, it was imperative that they brought together all the different agencies and organizations that could impact the outcomes. So they convened over 50 agencies, everything from child welfare organizations to social services organizations, to leaders of houses of worship, to the school districts, to agencies that work with sex trafficking victims, and on and on. This was a compelling idea. All of these organizations had worked in silos, each doing good work, but often with conflicting messages. They brought that team together who meets regularly, they share best practices, They learn from each other, they hear from experts in the field, and they come together as a unified voice. The next pillar was to educate the community. It was now time to take all of this knowledge and to turn it into action. So they started with developing a website, a child abuse prevention website. It took almost 2 years to develop. They gathered over 1,600 resources for use by professionals and by parents. All of these resources have been vetted. They are able to be downloadable for free, and it's everything from information packets to videos and flyers, anything that could be useful for a parent, a teacher, a youth minister, anyone who is around children and needs to be able to be educated. And then they said, now it's time to take this in a proactive way into the community. And they developed a child safety campaign called You Have the Power. It is grounded in the understanding that we as adults have the power to protect our children. And there are certain things children can do as well to keep themselves safe. You Have the Power is a powerful program with the goal of not only educating, but helping parents feel competent and to give tools and tips across a variety of different situations. This is an example of one of the messages. This is directed towards a mother, towards a parent, to teach about body safety and boundaries. The next one is targeting children, younger children, because we know that children as young as 2 and 3 and 4 years old need very basic information about safety. And this tells children they have a superpower. Their superpower is their voice. If they are being harmed or hurt by someone, they can say stop and tell a grown-up. And then there's messages for teenagers, talking to teenagers about online safety and what to do to create a safety plan. All of these messages and many, many, many more will go out into the community. They will be canvassing the community, again, in the schools, but starting young in the daycare centers and the early childhood centers, in the youth-serving organizations, athletic organizations, houses of worship, anywhere that children and the public are able to receive this information. The final element is to prototype. They are taking this program, this initiative, and as they go into the community, they're learning. They're iterating and they're learning about what is working and what could be improved. And the most important anchor of the entire prototyping is ambassadors. Because for so long, as I have mentioned, we have not been talking about child abuse. It has been silenced. It is off limits to talk about. And so we know that it may meet with resistance. There are deep-seated cultural norms and beliefs across our community in various neighborhoods and various backgrounds, and this may meet with resistance. So it's important to have trusted members of the community to be able to deliver the message, to open doors, and be a spokesperson, because we think this will increase acceptance of the initiative. So this is just one example of groundbreaking work that's being done in one community. But there are other communities doing wonderful trailblazing work as well. Like in Omaha, Nebraska, they have developed a program called Trauma Matters Omaha, in which they have trained over 30,000 people in child abuse prevention. Or in Traverse City, Michigan, in which it caught media attention widespread when gymnasts spoke out about being sexually abused by a prominent sports physician. And there was a public outcry. The community called for something to be done. And so they developed their program, Talk, Protect, Report. They are training people in their community, and they are viewing it as a shared responsibility in their community for everyone to be responsible for the safety of our children. So these are just a few examples of what communities are doing. I am hopeful and I am optimistic that these trailblazing efforts that local communities are doing can be expanded, can be replicated to reach communities all over. Because if we do this, we will be changing the future of our children. We will be preventing abuse. There are thousands of children who will be abused this year. But we are at a tipping point. If we do nothing, this will continue. You have the power, we have the power to make a change and rewrite the future for our children. And if we do, the ripple effect will be enormous. It is time for us as a community to come together in the prevention of child abuse so that no other little boy or little girl has to go through what my mother did.